Okay, welcome back to what I guess is the main part of this whole project, which is collecting and planting the hedge. Tomorrow I've got to pick up a van. I did lots of research as usual into all the hedging options, and I found quite a few nurseries online which will dispatch to you by pallet and things like that, but all of them were pretty expensive, or maybe it's just the standard sort of price for hedging, but it was going to be quite restricting in that it would mean we'd have to have a much shorter hedge or a much shorter length of hedge, which was a shame because I was putting all the work into getting all the trenches dug, and I'd rather just do it in one hit rather than do it in two sessions over a few months. So I did a sneaky little Google or eBay actually, and I came up with just what seemed to be too good to be true, which was a guy selling off loads of hedging. At first I thought it was going to be leftover hedging from a project or something, but I gave him a call. It turned out he was a wholesale nursery supplier and was just thinning out all of his hedge stock. So what would be normally sort of 70, 80 pounds plus VAT probably, from the nurseries online, he was selling for £15. So although I had to hire a van, I think this is going to be the best route to go. The van's going to be about £70 I think for the day plus fuel, so it's probably about 100 quid all in for the transport. But when you split that over the 30 hedges, £3 or so more, it's still under £20 a plant, which you don't even get a Christmas tree for that, so I'm really chuffed. Right, got the van. It's below freezing, so it's taking a while to warm up and defrost. But I'm hoping we can get straight on the road. We'll be there late morning, back just after lunch, and I can get planting before the end of the day. So the drive was about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, across kind of the south, through kind of Wiltshire and Hampshire. So it was a nice drive, bit of motorway, bit of A road, and it all went to plan. So I was picking up 30 hedge plants. I got them on eBay. The guy was a wholesale grower and he was selling off what he didn't need for this season, which worked out really well. He had a variety of sizes, and he couldn't guarantee the heights, but I kind of said, providing I can have 15 of them at an even height, about 5 to 6 foot, and the other 15 didn't matter as much. So it was a little bit of a gamble. Not quite sure what I'm turning up to see and find, but for the price it was a no-brainer. I'm driving down here and I can see these big 7-8 foot laurels, Portuguese laurels, and I could only assume they were someone else's, but it turned out these were the ones, which was just a serious result. So these ones I'm loading now are the first ones, and I'm kind of bending them over at the top to get them in this high top transit, so they really are kind of 7-8 foot, which is great, really established plants. The second half of them were as big as I thought the tallest ones were going to be, so they were still 5 to 6 footers, and he even threw in a few small ones as a bonus. I think, because we're at Stonehenge now and it does get busy here, I think, is it the winter solstice? Is that now? I don't know. But there's an awful lot of camper vans and people here, so I think it may be that we have hit the winter solstice. Well, home sweet home, that was pretty painless. So let's get digging. So I'd hoped to get all of this kind of sorted before we picked up the hedging, but I really had no idea about how deep the root balls were going to be, and I was also waiting on delivery of the soil, so I had to wait till I kind of got them back. Turned out they were about a foot probably at maximum in depth, so I had to top up the trench that we'd dug because it was quite deep. So I dug that in, put some compost in there, some of this fresh topsoil to replace that clay, and basically tried to compact it all down, so I didn't want the whole thing to start sinking over the next few weeks. So there's a load of kind of chicken compost and other stuff in the garden that's gone in the bottom there. And then it's time to get the hedging out. Now these probably weigh about 35 kilo each, the big ones. So it was kind of no easy task moving them around. But you can see the size of these at the back. These are just the small ones. So you really want to kind of hold the root ball from what I read, rather than slinging them around like I am there. Those light ones were the bonus ones he threw in at the end. The rest of them are kind of slightly bigger, so we used a sack truck to move them around. So these are the 5 to 6 footers. These are going to go down both sides of the house. Kind of short hedging, really just as an add-on. We weren't planning on hedging the sides, but because these were they worked out £15 each, it was a no-brainer to get these at the same time, make the most of having the van. And they worked out cheaper than a fence panel, so I'd rather have something living, something green, and something that's going to set the house off nicer than some black fencing. So we decided to get all of the hedging out and stack it on the drive. We could then pick and choose and assess which ones we were going to plant where. Like I said, the first ones on were the biggest, so obviously the last off were going to be along the front of the house. Some of them are really bushy, some of them are a little bit more kind of spindly. Obviously these were being thinned out from the guy's field, so he wasn't going to give us the best of the best, but also because they were slightly too close, some of them were a bit thinner than they wanted, so it's only a case of leaving them an extra year or so and they'll bulk out. So I'm digging in a little bit more. You saw in that earlier clip some wood ash just from the fireplace. I also put in some general sort of fertiliser, I think it was Growmore that I had lying around. Really you want to be using kind of a root grow, I think it's called, which is almost like a fungi that clings onto the roots, and that gives them a really good start, but it's pretty expensive, and I was trying to keep things down on a budget, so we just used bone meal and fertiliser and natural kind of compost and organic matter, which hopefully should give them a good start. And they're nice, strong, established plants already, so I'm hoping we're not going to have any failed plants. So you can see just how busy this road can get, and that was the whole reason for getting the screen up. And getting the root balls is just the best way, because there's such established plants that within an hour you've screened off the front of the house, and there are a few gaps, but they'll fill out within a year or so and give us just a nice natural look at the front. And although there's a bit of effort in the digging, it's a pretty straightforward process. It doesn't take any special skills, no bricklaying or stone masonry. But these ones were the tallest. We planted at about 700mm centres, so roughly 3 for every 2 metres. We could have gone one less, I reckon, but we wanted a nice instant hedge there at the front. And I think there's enough soil around them to give them plenty to establish themselves in. So the next day it was time to get the 2 shorter hedges in. This one over on the far side of the house is kind of a bonus. These are the plants that he threw in as kind of an extra. They're the shortest and obviously the least bushy. But given time, they'll fill out. We're planting here about 800 centres, so still under a metre. So they should, over time, form a nice hedge there. We'll keep it lower, but it was a nice way to frame the front. And again, just kind of making sure that the top of the root ball is not because I think that the whole idea is that you don't end up with rot around the kind of collar of the plant. So you want to make sure it's level with the surface around it. We'll be planting some kind of daffodils and tulips and stuff around these because I've made it slightly wider. So again, just compacting it all down, making sure these aren't going to blow away whilst we're away over Christmas. So with that side all done, it was over to the last stretch of hedging, which is down the side of the gravel part of the driveway. So these were about 5 to 6 footers. Again, decent sized root balls, so making sure they're at a good height, and then kind of filling in between. That's the best way to deal with it in the trench. Of course, if you had good soil, you could just dig a hole per plant. I didn't think I'd have enough hedging to get right to the corner here, but as I had 2 plants left, I decided to dig out the rest of the kind of gravelly sub-base there, and then replace it with the topsoil I had left over. That way I could get in those 2 last plants and kind of continue it all the way to the garage wall. I decided not to plant that little cherry tree I rescued because I want to make sure it's in a decent place, so it's not going to need to be moved again. So I planted it up in a bucket for now. There's plenty of soil in there and a bit of feed, so that'll kind of overwinter it, and then we'll probably plant it around the back come springtime when we start in the garden again. So I was trying to clean down the driveway as much as possible to make sure we didn't tread in any of the kind of red soil throughout the house, and also try and divert it away from the gravel section, because the last thing I want is a load of weeds flying up in springtime. So a bit of pressure washer again. This was kind of taking the top of the tarmac off because it's on its last legs, this driveway, but together with that and also just running a hose over it and scrubbing it with the brush, that almost worked better than the pressure washer. So that way I could just divert all of the soil that was left on the driveway to one spot, clear it out, and then make sure it didn't go either down the drain or onto the gravel. I'm not sure if we're going to resurface this driveway or get rid of it completely, but that's a job for the future. There was a load of soil left on that membrane which had got wet and stuck to it like glue, so the whole thing became too heavy to manage, so I ended up cutting that up and then covered over the rest of the soil, and I could sort that out after Christmas. So the hedges are in, a bit of a top dressing with some grow more, and then I'm going to mulch over with some bark chip, kind of wood chip, and of course we've got all the edgings to still put on the drive and along this gravel, but I really wanted to get this hedge in whilst it was the planting season for the root ball hedges. So there it is, all finished. I think the house really deserved a bit of greenery around the front, so it's nice to have that up, kind of transformed. So the next few projects are going to be either around the back of the house or in the house, so less voiceovers, plenty more video, and more projects to come. So thanks for watching. Remember, if you can, do it yourself, and we'll see you next time.